grateful to be back with you all today and spend time with you all. I think this is just a great opportunity to talk about something that I've really enjoyed this year and we've enjoyed as a team here, and that is really our working group that we introduced to you all yesterday. The members of the working group, this is not the full working group, but many of the luminaries that have had a lot of input to this process, up here with us, and just grateful for the leadership and the creativity and the expertise that has been given as a gift to all of us as we look at this challenge of AI cybersecurity, including the debate we had, as we described yesterday, about what is the boundary of this first certification look like. We had some good debate, I think, about where does cybersecurity stop and trustworthy AI begin. And I think most of us that have done this for a long time would make the argument that incredibly solid cybersecurity is the foundation on which many things are built. Maybe in AI, it's one of three legs of the stool. You think about other elements like the data and such. And so I just think it's a great opportunity to talk about this. So let me introduce my panel to you. I'll ask for the next slide, please, and we can leave that slide on the screen for the duration. Thank you very much. So why don't I just, in no particular order, I'll just go down starting with you. And Jerry, introduce yourself and a little bit about what you do, and then we'll just roll down the stage and get going here. So.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Jerry Miller. I'm the CEO of Cloudticity, where for the past 13 years we've been helping healthcare organizations successfully bring their workloads to life in the public cloud. We have been HITRUST certified, I think, coming on 8 years now. R2 level, long before there was R2, and it's been a critical and pivotal point in our business, and we'll talk a little bit more about that today. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks, Jerry, for joining us and for your leadership.
Yeah, hi everyone, good morning. David Holding, I lead security compliance for health and life sciences at Microsoft. As many of you probably know, Microsoft is HITRUST certified at the highest R2 level. We also accept HITRUST as a token of assurance from our suppliers. We have a network of 58,000 suppliers plus worldwide. And we're obviously very deeply involved in AI. It's been an honor to participate in the AI Assurance Workgroup. Huge shout out to all the other members of the AI Assurance Workgroup that couldn't necessarily make it here today. But it's been a great ecosystem input and experience and activity. And I think the product that's coming out of that is very timely, very urgently needed, and very valuable. So thank you.
Thank you, David. Arun?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Arun Pamalapati. I'm Senior Security Field Engineer at Databricks. We are at Databricks, we're a data and AI company. We have a product called Data Intelligence Platform. We have many healthcare organizations using Databricks to organize their data and build AI applications on top of it, like companies like Regeneron. And I co-authored Databricks AI Security Framework and been working with this amazing group to come up with this excellent certification. So we're excited to be here and looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Teresa Godfroy, CEO of Silverthorne. What we do is help you start the journey on your HITRUST path, maybe before you get with your auditors, understanding all the requirements. My prior career was with a major healthcare facility. I ran the HITRUST Risk Assurance Program for a multinational, multi-billion dollar company. And we successfully had 3 R2s. And I've been using HITRUST assessments both to start the security discussion and assess the security outcomes of multiple applications for over 8 years now.
And I had the opportunity to sort of chair the working group, which was really, really a learning experience because I hadn't done something like that before. And I learned very quickly, we were so lucky to have so many really sharp and experienced people on the working group. So it was humbling, and I learned a lot through it, and I'm really grateful to everyone here, and to the point made earlier, to the other working group members that couldn't make it today.
Yeah, I think and that to me was the thing I observed as a member of the working group, not the chair. That was Jeremy's work, and he did it with incredible precision. But just the diversity of ideas and backgrounds this team had, and in addition to the members you see on stage, the other members of the working group, AWS participating. We had Optum UHG participating, and I think just a real tremendous cross-section of people that were companies that are in the management and concerned about execution, like Cloudticity and Microsoft and AWS, companies that are major consumers of AI, and really some of the leading lights of looking at AI in healthcare. And while Teresa very recently retired from her role, a Fortune 40 company, an impressive company, a brand you would know, in respect to her former employer, we're not naming it, but there's somebody you would all know, and she worked through the whole working group tenure as a representative of that company, along with colleagues that were also representing them. So I think just brought us some tremendous perspective of the challenges of looking at the pace of deployment across an AI system, and I'll maybe see if I can get some perspectives from her on that without naming her former employer. And then of course, Arun as a true deep expert and subject matter expert in this space from Databricks. They've actually developed their own security framework, which was quite valuable as a source of input to our process. So I couldn't be more grateful to sit with these people and to have had the opportunity to work with them. So again, my thanks to all of you. So Jeremy, really, I think I'll start with you today as the person that kind of brought us all together and kind of laid out the approach we would take. You know, I think it goes without saying we've talked a lot about this work this week and the working group and the value it had, but you know, I actually would like to go back to the very beginning. Like, why did HITRUST take this approach? Not only the approach on AI cybersecurity, which we may have already explained this week, but the engagement of a working group. You know, we don't do that in everything we do, but in this case, it was really valuable. I'm curious how you feel about that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Before the formation of this working group, and really around late 2022, when ChatGPT started to get popular, we would get phone calls from customers, and in the innovation team, they'd be routed to me, and it went something like this. Hey, we rely on the HITRUST approach and the HITRUST CSF to help us navigate IT security and IT compliance stuff. And I've got this other thing that's now on the radar for my organization, and the tool isn't helping me navigate this part of my world anymore. AI is something that we are prototyping and we're about to maybe implement. We've got another long list of AI use cases in the pipeline, and I'm looking at the HITRUST approach and the framework, and I just don't see what I need in here. And we acknowledge that, hey, this is a great problem to have, because we felt we were very well positioned to do some good here, given all the work we've done around building a reliable assurance pipeline and a reliable framework that's constantly updated, and the tooling and the assessment platform to really equip assessors and equip organizations to achieve assurance tokens. And so we said, you know what, let's explore what we can do on the AI space. And we didn't start out saying we're going to build an AI cybersecurity certification. We said, let's bring key stakeholders together and really understand what the need is around AI and risk and compliance and governance, and start from there. So it was really an evolving thing, and I think we started several sessions just generally acknowledging the common problem space before we really started to take direction toward where we landed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. And I think, we were in this space where, you know, we found my history with HITRUST. I've been on the board since the founding of HITRUST, or close to then, as I shared earlier this week. And I think most problems and most challenges that have come forward in terms of need to evolve cybersecurity, things like threat adaptive, other things, the framework serves very well. And it's, it's the control domains that we've defined are, kind of the science of how you organize cybersecurity. And this AI thing really did, I think, challenge us a little bit, because there are novel technologies, but also strong acknowledgement that there are things that already exist that we can build on. So I think having this team to kind of bounce those ideas against and say, is it really different? Is it really the same? Is it somewhat the same, but it has some different dimensions? I think just having people that are doing it on the ground every day, helping people do it every day, involved in the international market challenges of healthcare, large company dynamics, all those things are really valuable to build a product that works. And so, that, again, to that point of diversity. So David, maybe I could ask a question of you and maybe a couple of other panel members around the healthcare market specifically, and the advent of AI in the market. Microsoft, has really, we've been partnering on this global scale problem for a long time, and how do we help large organizations and very small organizations look at assurance as a success? And now that this AI thing is there, and clearly Microsoft is one of the leaders at the front with the OpenAI partnership, how do you see the advent of this as the solutions you're seeing, and maybe even a more specific sub-question there, like for the conversations you have every day with many people in health and life sciences, how many of those conversations are pivoting to this AI challenge? I mean, is it a big part of your agenda now, or still growing? How do you see the space?
Yeah, great question. And I would have to say candidly that I haven't been in a conversation lately that didn't include a discussion on AI. Huge excitement, huge energy around AI, wide recognition that AI is a super powerful tool, wide recognition that in order to deploy that in a manner that maximizes the good and minimizes the risk of the bad, that has to be done responsibly. Many of you have heard of responsible AI or trustworthy AI. There's some very concrete principles underpinning that. Of course, one of them is security, privacy, but also safety, reliability. If that AI system is given a variety of inputs, even some of them unexpected, does it behave gracefully or does it have catastrophic failures? Inclusiveness, are the benefits of the AI available to the whole patient population? Fairness, is it biased in a way that privileges or underserves a part of the patient population? Transparency, is it clear what the AI system is for and what it's not for? Accountability, is it clear who is responsible for the AI in terms of who created it, who designed it, who developed it, who is operating it? These are super important principles, and many organizations agree with them, and they want to operationalize their AI in alignment with these principles. But beyond looking at slides and nodding heads, how do they actually do that? Well, it turns out there's 3 really important tools that they can use. One of them is risk management, and many of us are doing great jobs of risk management around security, privacy. But there's an opportunity to up-level that, to get it AI ready and actually use that to operationalize the AI. Another one is AI governance, and the third one is AI assurance. And AI assurance, not just for their own top-down AI initiatives, but also for third parties that are using AI. So as we think about third parties, business associates, data processors, suppliers, many of them are actually innovating with AI faster than the covered entities. Okay, so when we think about risk to a covered entity like a provider, a payer, a clearinghouse, they need to be thinking about third-party risk, and I think assurance obviously has a wonderful role to play there. Great panel just preceding this. As we think about third-party risk, think about the risk from AI used by the third parties, and not just cybersecurity risk, because of course AI uses a lot of different sensitive data. But what if the third party is deploying or using AI that introduces bias or introduces transparency issues or things like that? So really have to get a handle on that. Really hope we don't, as an industry, go down the path of let's just do questionnaires. We know how grossly inefficient that is, both for the third parties and the covered entity. We know how risky that is because a lot of them are coming up with these questionnaires with not even close to the rigor that HITRUST is doing with the AI assurance framework. So I'll pause it there. There's so many more things we could do, but that's just a flavor of what we're seeing. There's a lot of urgency because use cases, it's not just like pie-in-the-sky experimental. There's very concrete use cases being implemented now around call center. Many of you have Teams. You're using Copilot with Teams, really concrete use case. I find myself rarely going to a search engine anymore. I use one of the AIs, and it gives me the answer. I don't have to go sift through like all the search engine hits and the clickbait and the garbage. I get the answers straight, and to us, it's really about AI empowering the human, not AI instead of the human. And it's incumbent on all of us to embrace it, experiment with it, figure out where it makes sense, even in our security, privacy, compliance work.
Yeah, thank you. And I think David's been a really strong advocate for the concept of trustworthy and responsible AI. And as we've explained yesterday, we see that in the journey that we're taking. We're starting with the spaces where there's guidance that can be implemented, but I'm confident that David and Microsoft are going to continue to advocate for us to punch out of that space and continue to grow as the guidance and as the clarity becomes real in the market of what can be done. So a true passionate person for doing this the right way. And so Jerry, I have a similar question for you and specific to your leadership at Cloudticity. And you've been on our podcast now, so thank you for joining us. We had a great conversation last year. about your work and your work specifically with cloud and making cloud real in healthcare. In fact, I remember this one really clever story you told, which I won't tell here in the interest of time, about the COVID pandemic and some work that you stood up in a matter of hours and short days, which probably saved hundreds, if not thousands, of lives in New York State. So a really compelling story about using modern technology efficiently and quickly. So I pivot to this AI problem. Is the same thing happening as you look at the cloud service providers now being the AI service providers? Do we see the same opportunity for leadership like that? And how do we think about that problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So AI, as many of you know, is quickly imbuing itself in everything that we do. And smart organizations are institutionalizing how they use AI, so it's less ad hoc and more directed.
Yeah.
So when we think about AI use in healthcare, there are three vectors where we see potential risk, and this is where risk management and governance and assurance take place. So it's clinical management, knowledge management, and systems management. So from a clinical management perspective, AI is getting better than humans at certain diagnostic protocols. So for example, images, reading x-rays and CAT scans and such. AI has become more accurate than physicians at flagging things that need further analysis. Obviously, if bad actors were able to get in the way of that clinical analysis, the impact on patients would be tremendously negative. And so assurance and protection in that arena is critical as we continue to drive more and more AI diagnostic techniques. From a knowledge management, if you think about how clinicians provide service to patients, it is potentially very error-prone because it's humans performing procedures. And as many of us know, anytime a human is in the chain, the chance for errors increases exponentially. And so my son was recently in the hospital with a broken arm, and it really struck me how everything was done by checklist. And the checklists weren't pulled from memory, just like a pilot performs a checklist from a sheet of paper before taking off. The surgeon does a checklist before performing surgery. And increasingly, those checklists and the compendium of knowledge that goes into building those procedures is pulled from internal documentation using retrieval augmented or RAG AI. That's another potential opportunity for a bad actor to introduce variability, which would introduce medical risk. Mm-hmm. And finally, we have systems management, companies like Cloudticity and other companies like ours that are using AI to monitor hospital systems and prevent cyber attacks and the things that we all see in the news that dramatically impact not only patient care, but flow of payments and the ability to access medical care and prescriptions. So these are the areas where we are both incredibly excited for the continued impacts that AI can bring to this industry, but also very careful in ensuring that those vectors of attack are shut down through processes like assurance with the HITRUST working group that I was privileged to take part of.
Yeah. Thank you for that. We've talked a lot about things like ransomware, its close cousin, denial of service, and as I think about those clinical pathways, Jerry, just thinking about the work I've done, it's truly frightening that if we become so reliant on these systems to really provide those helping hands to the providers that are giving care, and those systems either lose integrity or lose availability, it's a real challenge. I happen to have a son that's last year of residency as a physician, and we've talked about this a lot because he's in a rural healthcare setting, and I've asked him, I said, so if the EHR goes down, how are you at your care pathways? I mean, are you comfortable? He looked at me, he said, Dad, I don't think I'd know what to do. And that's not a criticism of him. That's an acknowledgement of the fact that medicine and the art of healing is being trained to rely on these capabilities. And they are as critical, as I found last week in Augusta, Georgia, as electricity and water and certainly air conditioning still at this time of year. So really scary, but also exciting that we can get ahead of the problem, Jerry. So thank you for that. So Arun, I think I've learned a lot from you and from Omar on our board and others about how AI systems, especially things like generative AI, they're certainly different, but there's so much the same of what we've done. They're built on common infrastructure, and I know you've done some really pioneering work on defining how to explain the scope of an AI system and what it's made up of. I mean, as you brought that into the working group, your perspectives and Databricks' perspective on that, please.
Yeah, sure. So thank you, Robert, for that. As we looked at AI in general for our customer base who are using Databricks for sensitive data workloads, one thing it came to us that you shouldn't be looking at AI as just a model. You need to look at it as a comprehensive AI system. So starting from your raw data all the way to the applications that you build on that AI and everything in between, like the models, the deployment, the way you deploy those models and the way you use those models, right? So at Databricks, what we did was we wanted to demystify for our customers how to look at AI. So we took that system and we built, we broke it down to 12 components and built a map so that we can look at what are these 12 components and various risks that you would see, and then you place those risks on respective components. So now you know where these risks may transpire, as opposed to you have so many risks and I don't know, who should be working on, who should be addressing these risks. So we built a map and we placed these risks on respective components. Now that we know where these risks may appear, right, we provided a control set. So with that, now you know where to deploy these controls. So that you within a given organization, you can go to your governance team and say that we need to have policies, access settings, or privacy settings, or data classification settings. Those are the controls in that space. And then you can work with your DevSecOps and say, hey, as we operationalize this AI application, I want you to think about the cybersecurity controls that we need to deploy here. So with the map that we provide and the number of controls, we have 60 risks and 59 controls. We kind of are able to provide a map or a navigation so that these individual organizations can narrow down which team of which organization actually is responsible for those specific risks and controls, and then actually use a framework based on how they're using AI. Are they using AI as an external model with like Azure OpenAI, or are they building their own internal ML predictive model that they built so that they know which risks apply when, and then they are looking at narrowed down risk set. And we mapped all those risks and controls for our healthcare customers with HITRUST AI security framework, so that for healthcare customers, the risks and the control set and how to implement those is right there for our customers.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's really great perspective on how we tie it all together, and I think that's been really, really valuable. So, Teresa, I'd like to maybe ask a perspective of you. You led risk management for Fortune 40, basically, company,
right.
very, very significant enterprise in the pharmaceutical space. And we've heard Jerry and David both talk about assurance as a critical success factor of getting this right. And I know leading assurance for this very large company you were in is something that was really your mission for many, many years now. As you look at the way AI is just, I think, maybe exploding, if I can be presumptuous, across a company like that,
Yeah.
how do you think about assurance and leading assurance and looking at those challenges? As AI for a company like that, do you govern it like as a single monolith, or do you think about looking at different use cases? I mean, how do you look at that problem?
Well, Arun's touched to it. You have to have those security controls that you can even reference to begin with.
Yeah.
But is it a Wild West at the moment? Yes. Everybody wants to be on that hot bus that's like, AI, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. So projects can spring up everywhere. And if they don't understand the impacts to our patients or even to the company itself by the risks they're introducing, it gets out of hand very quickly. So what we try to do is, first you have to have that inventory of where these projects are, and you need to get in there fast and early and say, okay, we understand your use case, and it's great. Please go forward and do that. However, if you're going to do that, we have to have a risk management program in place. We have to have security controls in place. And you don't get to pick which ones you're doing, right? That's why we have standards. And Jeremy gave us so many standards to read as we were going through this, to compile and to come up with the lists. And he has great links in the final product. It's amazing the work that they've done. But from our side, once we know there's a risk management program specifically for AI, you have to educate, you have to get it out there. If you know there's a new project coming, the factors that you can customize in the MyCSF tool to narrow it down to the kind of use case you're using. Are you using pre-training? Are you using, RAG? Are you using these different factors? Let's figure out exactly which security requirements you need to implement and build them up front. Don't retrofit. You need to know those, day one, we're going to do this. Let's get those in and in place. And then that way, if Arun comes up with the project next week and he goes, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, well, he can reach out to Jerry and go, Jerry, what did you do? And they start building that community, and they'll point people back to the risk management program. Where do you get the answers, and where do you get that framework? And HITRUST has done an amazing job of taking, well, they always do this, but taking the various requirements and coming up with a practical set of repeatable prescriptive controls. And as someone who's mostly in the audit space and both sides of the coin, that's important. Because AI, if you go to ChatGPT and you type in your prompt, today it said the answer is blue. Tomorrow the answer could be green, right? So how do you audit that? Well, you're not auditing the outcome so much, the response. You're auditing the processes that got you to that response. The security controls that allowed somebody to put something in your learning model or to access your learning model, those are the things that you can audit and control. And if you can keep that in a tight box, then you're going to be fine. There's still risk, yes, but you can always, mitigate sounds like the wrong word when you're talking about AI, because we're all a little terrified of what it can do. But there are things you already know. Third-party vendors are already working on solutions. Don't build it yourself. Wait, let them build it, let them get HITRUST certified, and then you can inherit from them. And I know there's a whole session about that later.
Yeah.
But you don't have to change your entire risk approach because you're doing AI. You just have to add some new vocabulary and educate people where to find the information and then enforce that they're using those controls. Don't let them just go off and spin something up. You still have to, you're in a regulatory environment. Be regulatory about how you create things.
Yeah, that's, I think it's scale too for an organization like yours
Yes.
and many of the others we work with. But also, with the acknowledgement that many of the systems in this room are going to be part of the larger ecosystem with third-party risk, because they'll be part of a larger system,
Yeah.
especially people that are designing and implementing really clever use cases. So I think that that's really a many problem at scale. And I do want to acknowledge Teresa's work. She was a pretty tireless advocate for our AI risk management insights report, and really described how, for their organization, the ability to talk to many teams about the problem with a common language, as you said, Teresa, kind of have that framework laid out is valuable. And I think we accelerated some of our roadmap based on her urging, because I think that was a really important observation. And I know other working groups like Optum really echoed that same challenge. So that's really powerful. So Jeremy, I have a hard question for you, my friend, but the whole work stream was hard. So you've heard all these perspectives. As you were thinking about the work we did over the last, it's been almost 10 months now. Mm-hmm. How do we pull all this together? I mean, how did the working group pull these ideas together, and how do you think about the opportunity that we're creating with this brain power we've got here?
Yeah. As Teresa was commenting specifically, I was thinking of the conversation I had on a recent podcast episode with an ethical hacker named FC. And the question was, hey, is AI helping the bad guys be bad to the scale we hear about on the news? And his point was, yes, AI is a force multiplier for your goals. And if your goals are to do bad things and be an adversary, it can help you be better at that. It's a force multiplier. The good news was, It also is a force multiplier for the defense teams to be better at defense. I also think it's a force emphasis for processes that we know we should be doing, like secure software development. It forces the emphasis on stuff like that. And proper and centralized access controls, it forces the emphasis on that. So you're really insightful, Teresa. I appreciate that. The question specifically, Robert, you at some point this year had said, look, we got a lot of planes in the air right now. There's the work we're doing with Dr. Klein in the room on the threats and understanding the AI security threat landscape. We've got a great big stack of really insightful standards and guidance and requirements talking about what right looks like in this space. We're trying to formulate controls from that. We've also got the assurance mechanism that needs to be updated to accommodate this. There's just a lot of planes in the air. How do we land these planes and actually get something cohesive that sounds like a single voice from the working group, as opposed to a lot of different voices that are all important but not harmonized? And that, in the last several months, I was humbled by how much work it was to get really good ideas out of PowerPoints into a single framework. But the work involved in continuous review and continuous feedback by the people on this panel and others was really the sort of motivator to keep pushing through. Because when it felt like, oh man, these planes, they're so high up in the air, I don't know if we'll land them, the nudges and the feedback was really what made it happen.
It's a challenge, and yeah, I'm not a good air traffic controller either, so it's sometimes you're like, oh my goodness, how do we get there? But hats to the team, and I hat tip to the team. And I want to say, I think we had an intention to have our public draft out, and the feedback from the working group and from others outside was just so rich. We're like, let's take another week or two. Let's we took it from, I think, something that was a good first look we would have been proud to put in the market, to something I think is a near final product, and even with the feedback over the last few weeks. And again, you've heard it so much this week. You're all part of that, so it's out there. You can see it. And I've been challenged as recently as last evening over while I was, convincing many people that they would not see me with a football in my hand, that there are perspectives and debates still to be had about this. So that's really good, I think, and I think that's how we create great product and great consensus. But ultimately, it has to meet the need, and so we'll draw a line under it, and we'll say this is version 1. We're ready, and I think we're approaching that point with confidence. So let me ask the panel. Maybe shift our attention from why and how to this problem of how this operates, because we want to put something out that's operational and that's relevant for the industry and for the companies that we serve. And Jerry, your perspective has been so unique as a company that's so specialized and unique at what you deliver. And when you look at something like this and you think about the work you're going to do to help continue to enable healthcare to meet those clinical paths and knowledge paths and all the things you described, how does a product like this or an approach like this serve the market need, and how do you envision working with not only clients but the service providers with this type of an approach?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we always start with why, and when you think about assurance, when you're going through your HITRUST assessment, it's easy to focus so heavily on evidence production and how you're going to tie that back to changes in standard operating procedures. But because we specialize in the healthcare industry, we try to never forget that the end result is that people get better more efficiently and faster and more with more efficacy, and they go home faster to their families and become back to their jobs and back to their lives. So that's the end goal that we always work backwards from. And so when we think about how can we most effectively apply what is still pretty brand new technology that has sort of taken root and blossomed really quickly, much more quickly than many technologies, we have to think about how can we most effectively serve that patient at the end. And it's through understanding how the technology is applicable in our businesses, adopting judiciously, applying rational frameworks like what this working group has been working on, what HITRUST has so generously sponsored, and then partnering with the cloud service providers like Microsoft Azure, who are best positioned to aggregate and leverage economies of scale to implement unthinkably large models that most of us couldn't implement on our own, but because they have the power of aggregation of customers and economies of scale, they can do that most effectively. So through that intentional deployment and never forgetting the end that we have in mind, through the judicious application and surrounded by some governance and controls like the HITRUST assurance framework, and partnership with great companies like Microsoft and others, this is how we think about most effectively bringing to market quickly, but in a controlled and safe manner, this game-changing technology that we think is going to make a significant difference in both the lives of our clinicians and the patients that they serve.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that perspective, and also for the reminder, this is about making people well and keeping people healthy. So I think that we have to always remember, at least for many of these firms here and in the room, this is our mission and why all of this is important. So, and I'm actually struck by the power of you mentioning your friends at Microsoft right next to you. And so, Jeremy, I kind of think about the challenge of governing and doing assurance in a system where it's going to be Jerry with Azure, with a client, all putting together the security framework to secure the underlying AI system. And so we've had lots of experience with cloud, with inheritance and shared responsibility. How do you build on that experience and those processes to allow this to happen properly across a distributed system of a deployed AI system? And then maybe, David, your perspective from Azure, because I know you guys have been real advocates for that approach as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the answer's in the question there. The wrong approach would be to sort of stop and build a different, completely separate thought process to shared responsibility. It really acknowledges that AI shared responsibility is part of the family of the shared responsibility problem that we've been tackling for a long time through the adoption of cloud and public cloud. And so starting with what do we have to work with, what has been working so well for the past decade, and what are the specificities of AI to layer on top of that, to build into that, as opposed to taking a hard left. And it happens that Microsoft has taken a lead in this area, in my opinion, by publishing sort of a compendium to their cloud shared responsibility model that focuses on that AI specificity. David?
Yeah, so many great points. And so AI is happening. There's a lot of urgency. It is being operationalized now. And how can we intercept that quickly to use the tools of risk management, governance, compliance assurance to help operationalize its safety, again, to safely in a way that maximizes the good and minimizes the risk of the bad. And so just like we provide that agility to spin up AI workloads in the cloud in a time frame that's incomprehensible. If you were to try to replicate that on-prem with your own hardware, I mean, some of that AI hardware is super expensive. It's, join the waiting list, like 6 months, a year, whatever it takes. But so you can spin it up quickly in the cloud, but how can Microsoft accelerate your journey to spin it up, but also accelerate you on your journey to be secure and implement privacy and leverage these tools? And so just like you all know the inheritance, the shared responsibilities and inheritance in a cybersecurity sense with Microsoft and Azure, we're going to replicate that with AI, shared responsibilities and inheritance. Shameless plug. Jeremy and I are doing a deep dive on that later this morning. Join us. But that is very much in the works and look to deliver you that benefit. And the other thing to keep in mind is there's, just like with the vanilla sort of shared responsibilities, there's infrastructure, platform, and software as a service when it comes to AI. Generally, you want to go as high in the stack as you can when you're considering AI. So if you want to do AI and you can get away with your use case by using AI software as a service in the cloud, so something like Microsoft Copilot, doing that, you inherit a lot from Microsoft in terms of safety systems around the AI, retrieval augmented generation. We've implemented those models with the responsible AI framework, so you can inherit a huge chunk. There's still some responsibilities like, of course, identity and access management, data governance, all that stuff, training, policy. But then, if that doesn't work, go to platform as a service. So think like Azure OpenAI. There you still get to inherit a lot from Microsoft in terms of safety systems if you activate them, retrieval augmented generation, all that other good stuff. very configurable platform. And then if you really must, in your use case, you can use infrastructure as a service, but then you're rolling your own model, you're building the infrastructure around it, and you can still inherit some, but not as much. So that strategy of go as high in the stack as you can, software platform, infrastructure as a service, and then look to inherit as much as you can. And then just want to underscore the urgency. There's a real temptation we see for people to say, well, I'm going to operationalize my AI, and then I'll figure out the security, privacy, compliance later on. And big mistake, right? I mean, it needs to be built into the design, the development, and it needs to evolve with the AI system. And so urgently, the risk management is needed, the governance is needed, alignment with the security controls and the AI certification and assurance. So those frameworks are out there for comment right now, the AI assurance framework. Have a look at it, look at how you can align proactively with your initiatives, your customers' initiatives. The other thing I want to pick up is urgency, something that Jeremy was talking about. So as thinking about compliance and just like securing the organization, we all know ransomware has been a huge pain point, right? What's the vector of ransomware? It's usually phishing or spear phishing. AI on the attacker side, that is improving the speed, scale, and accuracy, the efficacy, the click-through rate, if you will, with phishing or spear phishing. Used to be very expensive to do spear phishing. It takes a lot of time for the attacker to research your profile online, figure out that optimal email to send to you to get you to click. Now that can be done at speed and scale with AI on the attacker side. So unfortunately, that's going to exacerbate, the problem of ransomware and other problems around social engineering, deepfakes, et cetera. It's incumbent on us to get the security controls in place in the health and life sciences organizations proactively. Many of you have heard of zero trust security. That's something that's very integral at Microsoft, highly recommended to our partners, to all of our customers. And a very key element of that, which maps into the HITRUST CSF, is the continuous monitoring, detection, alerting, response, containment, remediation. And one of the things we're working on, it's now available for use actually, is Copilot for security. So think of AI empowering the security analysts and the SOC teams in the health and life sciences organizations so that they can ingest all this telemetry from their complex end-to-end IT environment. They can ingest all the threat intelligence. It figures out near real time, like what has happened, provides them guidance, what to do next, accelerates their investigation forensics, accelerates their reporting. It really introduces AI speed into the defense side, and that kind of thinking is needed to get ahead of the curve of the risk.
Terrific. Thank you, David. And a lot to unpack there, I think. But I think we'll go back and play the tape later because I think you gave us a good prescription for a lot of the space there. So I have a couple of questions for the panel, and I'm just, in the interest of time, maybe just have a couple of you speak to them. So if you feel really passionate about the question, jump in. And just to kind of set the stage at a broader scale. So first thing is third-party risk. We talked just a few minutes ago about third-party risk management. AI seems to be a big third-party risk problem. Lots of AI systems from lots of companies with super creative capabilities. Any unique perspectives? Maybe not third-party risk broadly, but unique perspectives to AI from a third-party risk perspective. Any of you think about as you look at this?
I can go first and let David and others chime in. So when we talk about third-party risk, there is a lot of times customers spend too much thinking about what if, I send my data to Azure OpenAI, and what if that gets hacked and my data is exfiltrated. I think for that, in the shared responsibility, you would leave it to Microsoft or other model providers. I would say focus more on things that you can control while you get the assurances from the shared responsibility from those model providers, and spend time on is my data getting logged? Are you storing my data? How are you storing my data? How should I be concerned about data poisoning? That are in the shared responsibility model that falls under you as a customer who is responsible for your customers. Like, what is happening to the data is more of an aspect that customers can focus on while getting assurances from how are you securing the models from these third parties. That would be something to think about.
Yeah, just to add to that, so Microsoft has kind of in a unique position where we We are HITRUST certified, and we use that token of assurance wherever possible with our customers to reassure them that we have adequate privacy security. But we also have a network of over 58,000 suppliers worldwide, many of which have access to sensitive data, and they need to be vetted from a security privacy standpoint. We have this Microsoft SSPA program, Supplier Security Privacy Assurance. If our suppliers are HITRUST certified, we'll take that token of assurance. Otherwise, they get the questionnaire, which we know is really inefficient, and sometimes there's risks if that isn't implemented well. So we're actively looking at augmenting that with the HITRUST AI Assurance, token of assurance, where if a third party is using AI, we can take that as a token, not just the baseline cybersecurity token of assurance. I think that's going to be super important. The other thing I'll just add is many of the third parties are innovating with AI much faster than the covered entities, the providers, payers, clearinghouses. And what you've seen is AI right now with like text and response with Copilot or whichever AI you're using. That's very soon going to be enhanced with agent-based AI, where you ask the agent a question and it does a bunch of thinking, like chain of thought. It's really working to give you an answer that's super accurate and well thought out. Think of much longer context windows where it can remember a lot about what you've said previously and give you a very intelligent response based on that memory, if you will, that context window. And the last thing coming down the pipeline in the near-term future is text to action. So instead of you just asking the AI and it giving you an action or giving you a response, but the action is all on the human, the AI will be able to actually take action. So imagine a travel use case. You say, hey, I want to go for a vacation somewhere. These are the kind of things I like to do. Here's my budget. Here's my time frame. Give me a plan. Oh, I don't quite like that. Tweak it in this way, that way. When you're ready, boom, you just ask it, okay, book that. It goes and books the airline ticket, the hotel, everything. Like, this is coming. This is near term. So this urgency in that innovation is just going to speed up, and the urgency to intersect that with the risk management, the governance, the assurance, super urgent. Can't emphasize that enough.
Yeah. Actually, I want to ask, not ask the audience a question, but ask the audience for some help, because I think one of the things I've seen very clearly in the last 6 months as I've talked to various leaders across the industry and others is we do see the pattern repeating from more traditional forms of cybersecurity, with a lot of companies that are covered entities and others that are saying, okay, I now have my AI questionnaire, and I should probably feed them all to ChatGPT because they probably all come from the same root. But the questions are not always relevant. In fact, in many cases, they're absolutely not relevant. I mentioned an example yesterday of I want to know the full set of data you used to train the model and where it came from. I think it actually was one of Omar's examples, Arun, and really an insightful view. And that was from a major bank in the U.S. that said and then the answer is, if you can't tell us all that, you can't use AI, which is, I think, a horribly short-sighted view. So each of you, I think, in your roles out there have the opportunity to do two things. Is if third-party risk of AI for a system you're working on is something you care about, I would ask that you consider advocating for this approach. We're not saying it's the only approach, may not even be in the perfect approach, but it's an approach that I passionately believe has consistency and relevance and reliability to it. And many voices raising the need will accelerate things. And I know David is hearing those questions starting from Microsoft having to step into this space as a provider. So and I think they'll be there with us, and I'm sure their compatriots and other providers will do the same. So it's very important to realize you're part of the mission, you're part of the team that makes this happen, and your voices in this room are enough to sway significantly where this goes. So just a flow here. We're coming up to the end of our prepared remarks and time. So I'd like you to think of your questions, because I'm going to try to open for one or two questions. But before that, I think I'll come back, Jeremy, to you. You had a lot of comments on the panel, on the request for comment, the public socialization. Is maybe just one or two comments where either they surprised you or they were so consistent and they really sort of rocked the world of how we saw this as a working group and created some value add, or maybe a debate that we have to have still?
So it's interesting, the source of the comments. We received comments so far in writing from 12 organizations, some very large, some very small, some very detailed, some very high level, some organizations that were near and dear to HITRUST, and some that we've just meeting for the first time through this opportunity. And depending on who the comment's coming from, it's either very detailed or very directional, right? And so some were like, hey, this is excellent, but the scope is such that I can only use this in my security team. What are we going to do next for the rest of responsible AI? Great feedback, right? Very important. And there's other comments, also very important, that say like, hey, I'm looking at, for example, this requirement that talks about getting the model card for the models that you're relying on. And there's differing opinions, right? So one comment on the model card was like, what's a model card? And I don't know if this is ubiquitous enough to really start to require. And several other comments were like, hey, you're talking about getting a model card, but this is the opportunity to say the model card must contain X and Y and Z to enforce further standardization on the concept. And I think they're both valid points of view. One indicating there's a need for training and awareness, and there's also a need for more standardization across these concepts. So it's difficult to come up with a theme, but I will say where there's organizations that have really leaned in to provide detailed feedback, and sometimes in a spreadsheet or a Word document, we'll reach out and actually have a conversation and really understand, hey, I have a question about this comment, but really, where's the comment coming from? I get more from those conversations than really the written feedback at all. To understand they're internalizing the use of this, and they're seeing further downfield a year or two after this is becoming popular, and they're going to do it again and again and again to help assure AI is being managed appropriately. So it's difficult to make a generalization, Robert, but it's been really encouraging.
Yeah, it's very good. I know I had a conversation last night with a gentleman that was like, well, from the lens of the world he works in with the type of AI he's supported, RAG isn't real. And yet I hear from working group members, RAG is everything. So it's like, I think that debate is actually really, and if you're in the audience, sir, no criticism intended. I think it was, I think that debate is actually healthy. We need to talk those things through. So, and I've invited him to come see you, Jeremy, so you might get hit up on why we put RAG in there. So.
I was going to quickly say, the good news is we don't have any evidence that we got comments from AI.
What's that, I'm sorry?
We don't have any evidence that we got any comments from AI itself.
AI didn't weigh in.
No, I don't think it did yet.
So we're still okay.
Right.
I actually know that all the comments Jeremy has received about where is the rest of trustworthy and responsible AI are a co-pilot agent running on David Holding's laptop, I know. So he's been so passionate about that topic, and he's right. So others agree with him. So.
It's all blood and sweat and a lot of hard work by Jeremy and team. It's human-produced documents.
That's right. I'm actually so excited about where that goes. But how do you, I mean, transparency and explainability, again, boy, I don't know how you test for bias. We'll have to really think about that one, you know. But I think there's science out there that's working on it. So
right, there's organizations in this room that are specializing just on this problem.
Yeah.
And it's indicative of the state of tooling and automation behind some of these tougher problems is catching up very, very rapidly in a good way. So acknowledgement of the problem and working on the solution is sort of happening almost concurrently, which is so cool, because so often functionality leads and tooling and security follow very, very far behind. And again, AI is being used to build AI software, and it's sort of in a good way in this aspect.
Yeah, the good news is, I mean, it's daunting looking at AI and thinking, hey, we need to figure out a wholly different way. But a lot of the principles that are tried and true to us without AI still apply. Like, if you're thinking about bias, how do you prevent it? How do you detect it? How do you respond to it? On the prevention side, make sure you have the full sort of data set. It's clean, it's got provenance, it's high integrity, et cetera. Do what you can. It's not perfect, but spend a lot of time on crafting the data set, training the model, and then monitor the AI as it's taking inputs, as it's producing outputs, have the detections in place. Looks like we got some bias. What are you going to do when you detect bias? You're going to take it offline, you're going to retrain it, whatever the case may be. Like, don't just let the AI just free run and not have anything in terms of, hey, intentional crafting of the data set, the training, the monitoring, the response. Prevent, detect, respond. We can use those same principles that we know work so well. Just use those with AI intentionally and as soon as possible.
Yeah. And as much as we talk about it being intelligent, it's still not human. Maybe in a decade, maybe sooner it gets there or close to there, but they're still human beings that have unique perspective that goes beyond the neural network. So all of you being in the loop on that type of analysis in your programs is going to be really important. So I'd like to invite questions or comments from the group out here. So I know we've got our colleagues. The gentleman right here in the middle, I see a hand up. So, okay, great. We'll start here and then we'll go there. So thank you. And then panel, I got one question for you at the end.
Hi. As a part of the working group, how did you guys think about the criticality of the outcome of AI, right? So 2 examples. AI is making a decision that can impact, my health outcome, versus AI is answering a security questionnaire that, the impact is the 2 teams sync up and, things get clarified. How did you guys kind of address that as a part of this working group?
I can give a perspective.
Yeah.
So one of the most fundamental concepts with AI is, AI empowers the human. AI is not instead of the human. AI doesn't generally replace the human. There might be corner cases and very simple tasks, at least currently. So it's about, how does AI empower the human? How does the human get informed by the AI in a way that enables them to make better decisions? And so ensuring that, those the decisions make sense in the realm of valid outputs, that's super important, right? The human in the loop. And we don't see AI replacing humans, but rather humans that use AI and have 10x the productivity will over time displace humans that don't use AI. So again, urgency just for all of you personally, if you aren't using AI, get your hands into it, figure out how to use it even for your job, security, privacy, compliance, and get involved in the HITRUST AI assurance. Figure out how to apply that as early as possible.
Another perspective on the question, sorry.
No, go ahead.
If I can build on what David's saying there, part of the question was AI completing their own security questionnaire, right? So many of the firms that you see out there in the hub, in the lobby, are already using some AI tools to do the auditing, but it's read the documents, do the mapping, point to the sections, maybe fill in some of the blanks to help me make it better, depending on your client side, or show the gap if you're on the audit side. That's great, and I love that innovation, because that's the hardest part of the audit, is wading through all the documents. But there's still that evidence piece, right? So you filled out your questionnaire, you've sent it over to David, and he's going to look at it, but somebody's still going to call you on it and go, okay, how did you prove it? If you have a HITRUST certification, you've gone through effectively 2 audits to get that certification with the QA process that HITRUST has built in. So I can rely on that 2 sets of humans have at least validated a tangible piece of evidence related to that control. If it's not HITRUST certified and you're just doing the questionnaire, I would assume the security analyst has reached back to you and go, okay, let's talk this through, and asked you to produce some different things so that they got that level of comfort. So you still have that human looking at it. They're not, to David's point, they're not replacing the humans completely. And actually, to my mind, the best way to use it is cooperatively. It's doing the tedious part of my work, reading through, but I still have to read the procedures to understand it, so I know how to evaluate your controls and the evidence that you provided me. If what it's written down doesn't match the screenshot of your configuration, you still have a problem. Now, if it's fixing both pieces, well, hopefully we're not there yet, but hopefully that helps a little.
Yeah, and we'll talk a bit in a later session today about categorization of different AI use cases, some very high impact, like using AI to determine dosing of prescriptions, or like clinical care decisioning, and maybe lower impact uses of AI, like maybe a chat bot that routes a customer service request and triage to the right customer service agent. We talked a lot about system categorization of these AI use cases, because it's hard to ignore. All the global regulations are taking some form of a red, yellow, green approach to categorization, with obligations matching the criticality. We'll talk about that a bit in this global dynamics session later today, so thank you for the question.
Jeremy, do you have anything to add on the criticality aspect the gentleman was asking about? Or?
Yeah, we'll talk about
Okay.
that later today, yeah.
Okay, terrific. Okay. Question over here, please. Okay, thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Walter Haydock, founder of StackAware. This question's for David. You mentioned the SSPA from Microsoft, and in the most recent version, it looks like you're going to be requiring ISO 42001 certification from certain suppliers, specifically in healthcare and also predictive maintenance. So can you talk a little bit about the timelines and whether you're going to have hard requirements for accredited certification? Are there going to be checkpoints along the way where folks can say, hey, we've gotten set up with an external auditor, we may not hit the 1 year hard timeline. Can you speak a little more to that?
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that. And I believe the next rev of the SSPA is going to be coming out next February, but they very much are actively looking at AI and AI assurance as part of that. And ISO 42001, for those that aren't as familiar, is deep in the sort of AI governance side of things. So that's going to be a part of what they're looking for from third parties that are using AI. We are actively working with HITRUST and the leaders of the SSPA program to get them to recognize the work that's being done by HITRUST on the AI assurance and accept that as they currently do the HITRUST. If a third party is HITRUST, has the R2 assurance, for example, they can use that as a token of assurance. We want to expand that to include the HITRUST AI assurance. I think HITRUST is a valuable value prop in terms of the harmonization. There's many different AI frameworks out there. For risk management, we got NIST AI Risk Management Framework. We got ISO 23894. We got ISO 42001. There's new ones in the works that are emerging all the time. Just like HITRUST has a huge harmonization value prop with cybersecurity compliance frameworks, they have that same value prop with AI compliance frameworks. And that's why we want to gravitate towards that over time. And we also look forward to leveraging the insights reports for the AI risk management and assurance, because we operate globally. And as we go into Europe, for example, they may know ISO 23894, but they don't yet know HITRUST as well as they do in the US. The insights report gives us a way to meet them in the context of their standard, and then build from there with the harmonization value prop. The other value prop of HITRUST, of course, is the extreme risk mitigation. You've heard about the trust report, less than 1% breach rate for HITRUST certified environments. We want to replicate that kind of success in AI environments that have so much sensitive data.
Terrific. Okay. Was there one more question over here? Yes, ma'am, please.
Hi, Julie Oakes with Protivity. So yesterday, y'all were sharing the new factor questions, and Teresa, you were talking about how this group worked together for the factor questions. And I was curious in regards to the kind of the risk methodology behind the one that was talking about, are the models, parameters, and technical architecture confidential to the organization, and that if the answer was yes, it actually generated additional factors. So I was kind of curious about the risks behind that.
Yeah, Jeremy, do you want to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. So that question, it sort of stems from this concept that some organizations are going to be using models that they've invested a significant amount of time, money, and effort to build and view as very confidential intellectual property that, if stolen, would be a great big deal. And while other organizations are using freely available models that they've spent little to no time customizing and don't view as particularly confidential or intellectual property at all. And on the former, where there is sort of this view, it could be a fully in-house built custom model. Model theft would be a big deal. And so saying yes to this is the model confidential, basically, would bring in a few extra requirements that help prevent model theft during the SDLC development pre-go live, and help prevent, I think it's model inversion, where you can sort of interact with the AI system to maybe even build a clone of the model to do white box attacks later. So a few extra requirements focusing on ensuring the confidentiality of the model both before and after go live is the focus of that question.
And if I could build on that. So HITRUST has done a wonderful job of, so I'm not the most technical person on the stage, obviously. I learned so much from these gentlemen. But they've done a wonderful job of their control categories and the topics when you go into the framework. So if you're looking for model theft because that's what's high on your mind, you can filter down to it. You can find it in your subscription or your assessment object, and you can focus on that. But I'd also add that even if you haven't started the AI journey, go into my CSF tool now Add the factors you're thinking about. Do a little digging. What does this mean? And start building those controls now into just your general programs, because it's going to come faster than you think, and you're going to be behind. But if you already know the language and you're already starting to think about the new controls that you're going to have to implement, they feel a lot like the old ones, but there's some new nuances and new technologies. You need to know those now. And the sooner you can build those in, the sooner you're going to be more successful on your journey. You don't have to necessarily certify your AI right off the bat, right? It's still a standalone. Just do your assessment if that's what you're comfortable with. But start looking at those features now in preparation for your future endeavors. And that's going to serve you so well, because even if you don't go to doing your own AI and you use some of David's products or Jerry's products and you've let them absorb the risk around the AI creation and models and everything like that, you still own the accountability for what happens to your data, right? You can't ever outsource that. You can outsource some of the risks, and you can share the controls and inherit from their successes. But earlier this year, we all saw one company went down, and their name was in the paper, right? Because everybody was using that company, and that's a real world thing. Now, if that's your company's name there, it may not have as big of an impact, or maybe it does, but that's your name out there going, we took down these hospitals, this business, whatever that is. So you need to know what's coming so you can prepare for it. Don't wait. That would be my biggest thing. Do not wait. Even if you're not talking about it today, it's not on next year's roadmap, somebody in your organization is hearing it on the news. I've got college kids talking to me going, so AI did this wonderful thing for me.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about it. Don't wait.
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to let that be the last word because it's a powerful word. Thank you, Teresa. I think this notion of urgency, because that was going to be my last question, was there's urgency around this, so how do we use this work? But I think instead, in the interest of time, I'll say that I think I speak for my colleagues on the stage here and my new friends, because we've become close through this process. By saying I think all of us have the hope and belief that this work is something that you can both learn from and apply, very, very shortly. And so the invitation is there, as Teresa well said. Use it, learn from it, challenge it, come back to us, give us feedback. And we're in a new space where I won't speak for all of you. I know some of you are very expert in this and well on your journeys, but I know many others are not. So I want to thank the members of the working group. I want to thank the members that could not join us today as well. I would ask you to please give them a round of applause because they've worked very hard.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.